This is the Somerset village of Puriton, on the River Parrett, about 2 miles from Bridgewater. The Somerset levels meet the western end of the Polden Ridge here, which runs 10 miles eastwards, carrying its Roman road to Street. When my wife first came to be vicar of the parish, she was surprised by a chance remark someone made. "You do know Jesus walked through the village?" Could it be true? There are many legends about him visiting Cornwall and Somerset in the years between ages 12 and 30, when the Bible is silent as to his whereabouts, but Puriton never seems to be mentioned. The legends seem to centre on Glastonbury, which was given the title Domus Dei, or Home of God, in the Domesday Book, and Priddy in the Mendips. Yet the church booklet does say an attractive legend attached to Puriton is that the nearest pilgrim route to Glastonbury for overseas and West Country pilgrims from Devon and Cornwall and Wales was by the Parrett, Puriton and Down End. This pilgrim's walk is said to have been an old Roman road and one taken by St. Joseph of Arimathea on his journey to Glaston. Joseph, according to the legends, was a metal trader in tin from Cornwall and lead from the Mendips. The Jewish Talmud says he was Jesus' great-uncle, being the uncle of Mary, his mother, so could have brought the teenage Jesus with him, possibly working for him. The window at the east end of the church shows Joseph, depicted as an old man kneeling at an altar, on which there seems to be a Jewish scroll. Behind him, through a window, is a pointed hill, which seems to be Glastonbury Tor without the tower, a tree, possibly the holy thorn, and a grave, because of the tradition that Joseph was buried at Glastonbury. Could Puriton have been their landing place when coming to the Mendips? It seems to have been a much more substantial settlement than today, and could even be the lost Roman town of Uxella, mentioned in the Ravenna Cosmography, a list of settlements in the empire, as being somewhere in Somerset, which has never been located. The route to the Mendips would not have been direct, but would use the Polden Ridge as a natural causeway to cross the marshy Somerset levels, then going north along the Foss Way to Beacon Hill near Shepton Mallet, then taking the Mendip Road to the mining settlements at Priddy and Charterhouse. Reverend Greswell writes of it in 1909, "The River Parrett does not of course lead straight to Glastonbury, but used to run to Down End, close under the Polden Ridge, by a loop which has long been diverted and forgotten. Some of the earliest benefactions to the abbey were along the Polden Ridge, and here was the especial jurisdiction of the abbots. Close to Down End Pill lay Puriton or Puriton, the ton on the Parrett, more ancient probably than either North or South Petherton, also tons on the Pedret or Parrett, further up the valley. A route that climbed the Polden Ridge and gradually reached an altitude of 300 feet above the marshes and meres that lay extended to both sides of it. This ridge gave a backbone to the region, running inland for many miles in a northwest and southeast direction, and took the traveller to a point not far to the west of Glastonbury Tor. Here, through Street, the via strata of Roman occupation, a main road interrupted the Polden route, going at right angles to the old Roman station at Ilchester. This for centuries was probably a pilgrim's route for all those who came to the shrine of Glastonbury by way of the Severn Sea. An article from 1885 by W. M. Arthur Jones, part of the annual publication of the Somerset Archaeology and Natural History Society for that year, confirms with this map showing the Roman roads in the area that Uxella Estuarium refers to the estuary of the Parrett. It goes further to suggest that a Celtic name, Puriton, with the Welsh double D, mentioned in early Welsh writing, may be the origin of the river's name, and also of the town of Puriton, called Puriton in the Domesday Book. As well as this, it shows that a Welsh name for the Severn, Havran, also means summer, and could be the origin of the name of Somerset as the Summerland. One of the legends of Jesus in Britain says that he came to a ship of Tarshish to the Summerland and sojourned in a place called Paradise. This map shows, as well as the Polden Roman road, another coming south towards the neighbouring village of Pollet. This suggests that Uxella may have been large enough to extend as far as Pollet. The article reads, Uxella is the Latin form of the old British name by which the estuary of the Parrett was called, and which occurs in the old geographers, has disappeared, and has left no representative in the language of the people. The term would seem to have been applied to the landlocked estuary covering the Bridgewater levels, and is evidently derived from the British Wisk Helly, implying free access to the seawater, Helly. Ad Uxellum was a Roman station lying on the shore of this estuary. It's usually been supposed to have occupied the site of the present town of Bridgewater, but the extensive Roman remains found by Mr. Stradling about the Polden Hills would lead us rather to look for it on the other side of the river. And if we are justified in identifying with Ad Uxellum and Avalonia, the Uxelliano and Avellano, which occur in Excerpta de Ravenna Geographio, was as connected together by a direct line of road, this view is greatly confirmed. The Parrett is a modern form of the Pedrodan of the Saxon chronicles, and Pedrodan is evidently a modification of Puriton, the name which was applied to the river by the ancient Britons. It occurs in a Welsh poem of the 7th century by the Cambrian bard Golithan, which relates to the great armed confederacy of Britain. Arms Purydin Vawr. Of this there are extracts, with a translation, in Thierry's Norman Conquest. In one place we read, In Aber Puriton, the deputies of a Saxon king, even before there was a public stipulation, stirred up slaughter. By arbitrary act with violence the deputies demanded and proceeded to collect a tribute. The Cymry resolved they were not bound to pay. Another version of this, from a web page on Merlin from the University of British Columbia, continues with lines seemingly associating a son of Mary, a sovereign word, with Purydon. An assembly at Aber Purydon will bring the High King's stewards. They will moan of death. To gather taxes the Cymry will not pay. Mary's Mabon, sovereign word, unbroken by Saxon battery. Mabon, in a dictionary of the Welsh language by William Owen Pugh, means a fine youth, a young hero. Purydon, in the same dictionary, is listed as meaning a stream possessing some powerful virtue, a divine stream. It is the name of some rivers. Perydd is given to mean a causer, one who bids to be, a bidder, one who orders or gives command. Perif seems to be similar. One who causes, the giver of existence, a creator, one who bids or commands, a sovereign, a king. It has been used for the appellation of Pharaoh. Jones's article continues. The poem is mainly devoted to the utterance of the indignation of the Cymry at the wrong thus inflicted. This occurred at Aber Purydon, and if we take Purydon to have corresponded to the ancient name of Wisk Helly, the site of this great conference and conflict would not be far from Puriton, which is near to the confluence of the estuary with the Severn Sea, and may possibly have been the Aber Purydon of the Welsh bard. I find it on the same old map, before referred to, in the form of Puriton. Passing by the Avon and the Axe, universally known as Celtic words, we come to the Severn and the Severn Sea, the British name of which is deserving of notice from its connection, indirectly, with the name which this county bears. What is now called the Bristol Channel bore the name of Môr Hafren. Hafren is the Welsh form of Severn. In a very ancient notice of the principal territories of Britain, given in the Iolo manuscripts, page 86, we find the Môr Hafren with Divnaint and Cernew given as the boundaries of Gwlad yr Haf, a district corresponding to that of East Somerset. This naturally leads to the conclusion that Gwlad yr Haf is the contraction of Gwlad Havren. The county of Somerset to the Welsh population of the principality, even now, is not known by any other name than Gwlad Hav. But in Welsh, this word have, which in Havren is doubtless identical with av, the root of Avon, a river, likewise means summer, and Gwlad Hav therefore admits to being translated either the land on the shores of the Havren or the summer land. The early Saxons who named the county would seem to have chosen the more obvious but less correct translation, and hence the county bears the name of Somerset.
The oldest part of the present St Michael's Church at Puriton is the tower, which is 13th century, but there must have been an earlier church here, as in the Domesday Book it's written that the Church of the Blessed Apostle St Peter in Rome holds of the king Puriton. Queen Edith held it in the time of King Edward. It has been suggested that the manor and church of Puriton were bestowed on the Pope by William the Conqueror as a thank offering for his blessing on William's enterprise. It didn't stay with him for long, but it was seemingly the only place given in this way, and the question arises as to why an obscure church in Somerset, far from his capital, should have been chosen for this honour. Could it be that whispers of a distinguished visitor were known about at the time?
King Einar was king of the Saxon kingdom of Wessex from 688 to 726 AD, and is known for the code of laws he established, which Alfred the Great later built on, and for founding many religious foundations, particularly the Minster Church, which later became Wells Cathedral, and refounding Glastonbury Abbey. He seemed particularly attached to the area of West Somerset, which included Glastonbury, Wells and Puriton, and from one of his charters, although it's not certain that it's genuine, would seem to have known of the tradition of Jesus' visit. These are extracts from it. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, I, Einar, supported in my royal dignity by God, with the advice of my Queen Sexburga, to the ancient church situate in the place called Glastonbury, which church the great high priest and chiefest minister, formerly through his own ministry and that of angels, sanctified by many and unheard of miracles to himself and the eternal Virgin Mary, as was formerly revealed to Saint David, do grant out of these places, for the sustenance of the monastic institution and the use of the monks, Brent, Sowe, Pilton, Dalting and Bleeden. To the piety and affectionate entreaty of these people, I assent and I guard, by the security of my royal grant, against the designs of malignant men and snarling curs, as it is the first place in the kingdom of Britain, and the source and foundation of all religion, no church may obtain surpassing dignity and privilege. There is also the possibility that Einar may have lived at Puriton at some time, as mentioned in the story of the murder of Indactrus. Saint Indactrus was a son of a king of Hibernia, and in company with his sister Drusa went to Rome on pilgrimage and returned thence to Britain, landing at a port named Tamarunta. Arriving at Glastonbury, he desired to go and pray at St. Patrick's tomb. At that time King Einar, king of the West Saxons, was living in a ville called Pedret, Villa Nomine Pedret, which may be the Domesday Puriton or Puriton, or perhaps North or South Petherton. His followers were living in little settlements round him, alluding no doubt to the first Saxon settlements in the Poldens. Among these was a certain Hona, who, tempted by the wealth he thought Indactrus had with him, murdered him and his sister, Saint Dominica, and his followers, throwing them down a well. They were described as sleeping at Shapwick, on the Glastonbury moors. Foundations of buildings found in the 1970s during construction of the M5 suggest a substantial port, which, with its communication via the Polden Ridge, could have been favoured by Joseph of Arimathea in approaching the Mendips. Many of the finds are now displayed in the Blake Museum, Bridgewater, whose description of the site indicates that it seems to represent part of a substantial settlement.
The description accompanying the exhibits reads, "Although we have no knowledge of the name of the place and no written reports of it, the inhabitants of the settlement seem to have been engaged in trading and or transshipping goods. This is suggested by the wide variety of types of pottery from other parts of England and Wales, and from overseas. Many coins were found covering the whole period from the late 1st century to the late 3rd century. The site was found during the construction of the M5. At the lowest levels, traces were found of a rectangular building with timber sill beam footings, 31 centimetres wide, associated with red clay damp courses or floors. The succeeding buildings were on a different alignment and had well-made stone foundations and wall bases. Stone and clay roof tiles and hundreds of iron nails had fallen to the ground. The excavations revealed at least 3 stages of rebuilding, with superimposed floors and changed layouts of walls. The most massive buildings, dated by pottery and coins to the early to mid-4th century, were aligned on a rectangular plan with cobbled lanes between them and a latrine at one end of the site. Large square rooms and a courtyard with lias flagstones did not suggest domestic living quarters so much as storehouses or industrial buildings. In the final phase, some rebuilding took place above thick layers of charcoal, signs of a considerable conflagration. The situation in or near the river and near the Roman road, together with the type of building, indicates the trading quarter of a small town. This favourable situation and existing port suggest the likelihood that Joseph of Arimathea may have used it as an entry port, particularly as other rivers may not have been navigable for his large trading ships. Jesus is not likely to have stayed there for long. It was a point of entry for other destinations, but his presence there, however brief, would have conferred on it a special significance for later generations, even though it can't be proved and probably never will be.